There are three intense and scary true stories about stalking.
Story 1. The Unseen Shadow. Sarah lived alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood. She enjoyed her solitude, often taking long evening walks in the nearby park to unwind after a long day at work.
One night, as she walked beneath flickering streetlights, she felt a strange sensation, the feeling of being watched.
Dismissing it as paranoia, she hurried home. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began noticing odd things. Someone seemed to have followed her on her walks, always keeping a discreet distance.
At times, she caught a glimpse of a figure lurking behind trees or buildings, their eyes always fixed on her. Confused and scared, she confided in a close friend, who encouraged her to report it to the police.
Days later, she received an unsettling voicemail on her phone. It was a raspy voice whispering, "I know where you live." Panic set in. She immediately moved her bed away from the window and installed security cameras around her home.
Despite her precautions, she continued to feel the presence of her stalker.
One night, Sarah heard a noise outside her window.
Heart pounding, she crept to the blinds and peered through.
There, illuminated by the moonlight, stood a figure in a dark hoodie staring at her house. Terrified, she called 911. The police arrived, but the figure had vanished. Sarah's stalker was never caught.
To this day, she lives in constant fear, forever glancing over her shoulder, terrified that her unseen shadow is still out there, watching. Story 2. The Obsession.
Emily was a college student who excelled at her studies.
She enjoyed her independence and often worked late at the library.
One evening, while immersed in her books, she noticed a fellow student, Jake, frequently glancing in her direction. He seemed harmless at first, but his stares quickly escalated into unwanted interactions. Jake began showing up wherever Emily went at the library, the gym, and even at her favorite CAFS. He would initiate awkward conversations, insisting that they were destined to be together. Emily was polite, but made it clear she wasn't interested. Things took a darker turn when Emily found a note on her car windshield one afternoon. It read, "I know you're with someone else, but you belong with me." That night, she received a series of texts from an unknown number, including pictures of her walking home.
Fear gripped her as she realized how closely he had been watching her. After telling her friends, Emily took precautions. She changed her schedule and even began using a different route to walk home. However, Jake continued to follow her. She noticed he was always just out of sight, lurking at a distance.
One night, during a late study session, Emily spotted him waiting outside the library. She immediately called campus security. When they arrived, Jake was nowhere to be found.
But Emily knew he was still watching and waiting.
To this day, she frequently checks her surroundings, always aware that Jake may still be lurking in the shadows.
Story 3. The Doorbell Camera.
Lisa lived in a quiet neighborhood with her husband Mark. They enjoyed their peaceful life until one day, they noticed an unfamiliar car parked outside their house.
At first, they didn't think much of it, but over the weeks, the car appeared more frequently, parked in the same spot for hours at a time. One night, Lisa received a notification from her doorbell camera motion detected outside.
She opened the app and watched in horror as a man approached their front door.
He stood there, staring at the camera for several minutes before leaving. They reported the incident to the police, but decided to stay vigilant. A few nights later, again the doorbell camera alerted them.
Lisa watched as the man returned, now dressed in a hoodie and covering his face. He began trying the doorknob, and panic set in. She rushed to wake Mark, and they both called 911.
By the time the police arrived, the man had disappeared, leaving only the chilling footage behind.
The following days were filled with paranoia.
They installed additional security cameras and kept their doors locked at all times.
The man continued to appear sporadically, lurking outside until one day, he stopped coming altogether, but the fear lingered.
Months later, they learned from a neighbor that a couple down the street had received a visit from a man resembling their stalker. He introduced himself, but came off as unsettling, often making inappropriate comments. The events finally escalated when the neighbor's son reported the man was watching them at night. Lisa and Mark realized they were not the only ones.
They moved away, but even now, they check their surroundings every time they hear a car engine or see a shadow outside, haunted by the memories of the man who watched them uninvited. Each of these stories illustrates the fear and anxiety that stalking can cause, showcasing the very real threat many individuals face in their everyday lives.